For those of you who do not know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Sati, and I hold a master's degree in experimental psychology. My primary academic focus was mindfulness. In my professional life, I own an online health and wellness business called Mindful Island. Maybe you've heard of it. I consider myself, when it comes to assigning labels of identity, a self-transformation coach, a mindfulness educator, and curriculum writer, and a yoga instructor. I've worked with people across the world to help them transform their life story through awareness and self-development practices. This comes very naturally to me because I've not just studied and researched and learned about self-development and self-transformation, so not just academically, not just professionally, I've actually lived it personally. I need to tell you this because while today will not be about me, I will refer to myself at various times as I discuss this important topic around disordered eating and relationships to food. It's important to me that I demonstrate to you that I'm not speaking without having experienced firsthand what I am conveying to you. I believe many people out there will resonate with my story. And for that reason, I share my experiences not for myself, but to give voice to the millions of men and women not yet ready to share their stories. We must all know first and foremost, we are not alone. We are not alone. So important. So perhaps like you, I've had a disordered relationship with food for most of my entire life. This poor relationship to food and eating has caused me physical harm, it's damaged relationships, and it's impacted my life in numerous negative ways. And today, actually for the first time ever, I'm going to publicly own that. Because the thing is, this disordered relationship to food, as much as it's been scary, it's also been a gift. As a result of my relationship to food and the impact it had on my life, I found a deep passion for healing and authentic health. And from this passion arose the strong desire to share what I have learned across my particular journey in the hopes that those out there who struggle in their own unique ways may feel inspired with hope for what those struggles have the power to turn into. So there is hope. That said, as a reminder, today's workshop is called Why Your Relationship to Food Sucks: An End to Disordered Eating. Although I'll discuss some personal stories, the majority of our time together will toggle between information sharing and practice. I need you to know that all of the information I share today is backed by science and not my personal opinion. I do have personal opinions, and I will absolutely share these with you, but I'll make sure before that you know the difference between what's scientific information and what is anecdotal. The research that I'll be sharing with you, just so you know, is current, high quality, mostly peer-reviewed, and from prestigious sources. So that doesn't mean it's black and white, always right, just as a caveat. Sharing sources is beyond the scope of the workshop today, but I love to do that. And if you would like to dig further on your own, which I highly recommend, contact me via email, sarah@mindfulisland.com. I'm more than happy to connect and share all of my sources so that you can go deeper into studying this topic. Before we go any further, the first and most important piece of information I must share is that I am not a medical professional. That said, while I will share some medical information with you, this is not intended to diagnose or treat any disorder. The topic we are addressing today is highly sensitive, and while I will be referring to people across the spectrum of disordered eating habits, those who would be clinically diagnosed, as well as all of the in-between, if you believe you have, or if you are working with someone with a clinically diagnosable eating disorder, it is of the utmost importance that you seek medical support from trained medical professionals. This workshop is meant to provide you with an opportunity to learn a little about disordered eating and ways that you can begin to take personal responsibility for your life starting today. But work at this level when dealing with clinical eating disorders, it should always, and I'll talk about this quite a bit, it should always be combined with medical treatment of some type. Additionally, today is a limited amount of time, and this topic is complex and multifaceted. You're going to see that. I will give you a taste, but it's by no means enough to be the end of the road in terms of your healing journey. In fact, the information I share with you today, it's part of a larger body of work that I've actually dedicated the past 2 years to creating. This work is a live course. I'll launch its final iteration in February. It's called It's Not About the Food, the How, What, When, and Why of Eating. This title is as accurate as it gets. A relationship with food is a robust portrait composed of many component parts. And when you're transforming your relationship to food, these parts in their entirety, they cannot be overlooked. So logistically speaking, we're about to get started, really get started. And this is what you would benefit from having with you. So you can gather these things now. A way to take notes and a cushion to sit on. Very simple. If you'd like to engage with me during the workshop, I will make time at the very end for questions. Hi. So please write down your thoughts and save them until then. I don't have a team helping me, so I'm unable to both follow my stream of consciousness and answer chats at the same time. But thank you, Dee. When I do that, then I lose some of the information. I lose my train of thought. So I don't want to do that. I'm sorry if this causes any inconvenience, but at the end, I'll take some questions. So please write them down. Also, it's important to know that I'm recording this workshop, not your chats, just me, and I'll be sharing the video and the audio later through Insight Timer and my own channel. So if you're unable to gather all of the information today, or you know someone who would benefit from this information, please know there will be access to it later. So you can connect with me or you can find me on Insight Timer. It'll be here. Now let's begin. Have your cushion wherever you are, sit up straight and close your eyes. Other than righting your spine and closing your eyes, change nothing. Bring your mind fully into your body, fully into the space your body is in, and allow yourself to explore this moment exactly as it is in a curious and open way. Open yourself to all of the sensations you are currently experiencing without pushing anything away. Thoughts, emotions, sensory input. Let yourself experience these without judgment or adjustment. Even if your mind feels restless, even if your mind desires to change something, rather than giving in, simply notice those sensations as well. Let everything be okay. Now bring your awareness to your breath. Notice your breath in its very natural and unchanged form. It may be short or long, deep or shallow. Resist changing or critiquing it. Simply let it be exactly as it is in this moment. And for the next few moments in silence, allow your mind to relax into this very natural, authentic way of being. We are about to embark on opening ourselves to a topic that very likely comes with a lot of emotional challenge. Because of this, it is extremely important that you take some time now to be as relaxed as possible, making space for the potential for difficult emotions to arise and creating the right conditions to handle those difficult emotions as lovingly as possible. To do this, take a few moments now, riding your in and out breath with the attention of your mind and repeat to yourself these few simple phrases in sync with your breath. You are safe in this moment. You are supported in this moment. All is okay. You are safe in this moment. You are supported in this moment. All is okay. Take a few moments in silence now to not simply regurgitate the words, but to also bring to your body a deep feeling of safety and support as you say the words in a very loving tone inside of your mind. Anytime you feel anxious or as though a trauma response is impending, bring your mind back to these words and the feeling of your natural in and out breath. Take a deep, conscious inhalation through your nose now. Open your mouth and sigh as you let it out. Allow your breath to return to normal. Open your eyes. Hi. Okay, welcome back. So the first thing I want to do with you is to have you write down answers to a few questions. Question number 1 is, what does a healthy diet mean? So that's number 1. What does a healthy diet mean? The second question is, what does a healthy relationship to food look like? So what does a healthy diet mean, and what does a healthy relationship to food look like? Take your time creating thoughtful answers for yourself. I'm going to give you a few moments here, a few minutes. Really process this. Try to be as accurate as you believe you can be in this moment. So go ahead and start now. I'll type the questions in the chat. Hi, Alejandra. Hi, Ava. How's it going? Good? Finished? Just about? Okay. If you weren't here at the beginning, I'm here also live with someone, so lucky for that experience. Go ahead and wrap it up now. So now that you've answered these 2 questions, it's my turn to tell you if you are right or wrong. Okay, so here it goes. No matter what you wrote down, you are right. No matter what you wrote down, you are right. There is no one size fits all. This is important point number 1. Please do not discount it for its simplicity. There is absolutely no scientific evidence for one single right feeding protocol or healthy relationship to food. Not a single one. Did you get that? How you feed yourself, how you relate to food, scientifically speaking, is highly individual. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach. So the first step to healing your relationship to food is to drop the notion that what you think isn't valuable or that what you believe about how you feed yourself is wrong. This feeling of not being able to listen to your own inner voice or your own intuition is one of the reasons you have a disordered relationship to food in the first place. And it most certainly leads to stress, and stress is very counterproductive to the process of self-transformation. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this. In my early 30s, I was dating a man and became quite close with his family. I was already eating a vegan diet at the time. This is my diet of choice. And I was informed about nutrition and psychology, the psychology of food, but I wasn't nearly informed to the extent I am today. I really believed that an almost exclusively plant-based diet was the right way to eat for the majority of the population. One day I was hanging out with the man, and I was seeing this man that I was seeing, and I was with his sister, and we began talking about food. His sister said to me that she could never eat a vegan diet, that she actually needed an almost exclusively animal protein diet. She said that her body didn't digest vegetables well enough, and that when she tried to eat more plant-heavy diets, she would get quite sick. Maybe you've heard a story like this. At the time, I had a hard time believing her. And maybe you're even thinking this now, like in the back of your mind, perhaps she was just saying that, or she had an aversion to it or something like that. Well, as it turns out, in fact, she did have something medically actually going on in her digestive system, and it made it so that she could process animal protein easily, but she struggled with a plant-based diet. And this story illustrates what our first important point is telling us, that no one diet is right for all people. You have to drop that notion. Culture, genetics, environment, preferences, values, upbringing, childhood, these all play a crucial role in how our bodies process food. So I grew up in a vegetarian household, and giving up animal products, it came naturally to me. My body and my mind prefer it. But for someone else, this diet could not only not be preferable, it could actually have detrimental effects. So a great example of this, and maybe you've heard of this before, it's the movement to spread the American diet to other parts of the world. First of all, if you don't already know, the acronym for the standard American diet is SAD. And that's because that is exactly what it is. So to be clear, while today I'm not talking about what you should eat, I am stating there is no one right diet. So that's true. But this should not be confused with that what you eat doesn't matter. We do have some science to suggest what the basis for creating the best diet for you should be. Not talking about that today. But for instance, we know bacon is one of the worst foods you can eat. That doesn't mean that everyone who eats bacon will get sick or develop a disease. The thing is that being at the point to make changes to what you eat takes time and patience. And for authentic transformation to take place, other work often needs to happen first. But I digress. Let's go back to the example I want to share with you about the standard American diet spreading from the West outward. As this has happened, it's caused a lot of problems for people in other countries. So like if you're from France, maybe you know this, not just because the diet is sad, pun intended, and disease promoting, but also because biologically other cultures who did not grow up with certain foods as staples in their households are not able to handle certain nutrients. The spread of milk drinking in Asian countries illustrates this best. It's a really great example. So a high proportion of Asians are lactose intolerant or lactase deficient, meaning they lack sufficient lactase, the enzyme necessary to absorb the sugar in milk, lactose, and they may suffer from diarrhea, gas, and bloating after consuming dairy products. That's a big deal if we're trying to sell this outdated American food pyramid to the Asian people as though it's the best way for them to eat as well. This is not just happening from globalization, though. It's happening within American culture also. What you ate growing up helped you develop how your physiology works. So it was a building system. What your mother ate while pregnant, that also plays a crucial role. So why does this matter when we're discussing disordered eating? You might be thinking that. One reason this information matters when it comes to disordered eating is that in this day and age, with so much information, so many diets, so much dogma around what the right way to feed ourselves is, it can feel overwhelming and confusing. Because of this, we may begin to question ourselves. We may think, okay, I like yoga, so I have to be vegan. And then we eat vegan and we gain weight, we feel sick, we have brain fog. But we're supposed to be vegan, right? We like yoga, that's what yogis do. Well, maybe Maybe it's an issue with the way you're doing vegan, that could be the case, but it could also have something to do with your gut microbiome. It could have something to do with your hormone sensitivity or insensitivity. It could have something to do with your neurochemical profile. The challenge with feeding ourselves today is that it's been made out to be so much about our psychology. We've forgotten the major biological component that truly matters when it comes to the best way to feed our bodies. And this is something I'm really going to stress today. What happens as a result is that by listening to these messages that there's some perfect diet we should follow, we lose touch with our wise internal guidance system. The one that says, hey, this is actually making me sick when I eat it. When we lose touch with this internal guidance system, it's very natural that we become disorganized and from there develop disordered eating. We can't hear ourselves. We stop trusting ourselves. And in that way, we lose the ability to manage ourselves effectively. In essence, we lose the capacity to take responsibility for ourselves. So this is so important. Sometimes this piece of information alone is actually enough to stop someone from their disordered eating habits. Simply saying that you should stop listening to what other people tell you about your perfect diet, and that's what I'm saying, stop listening, and that you should start listening to what your body is telling you, this can have a profound effect on changing your behavior. Not necessarily immediately, but definitely over time as you relearn to hear yourself. The thing is, it doesn't happen overnight. We have to, as I said, relearn to listen to ourselves, and this is something I will definitely address later. I do want to mention that this is especially important for dealing with our children. If you work with children, listen up. If you work with them early on these sorts of things, teaching them to be in tune with how foods make them feel, you're able to head off potential later disorders. So if you're someone who works with children regularly, a teacher, a mother, a father, or in any other capacity, make it your mission to bring to their lives opportunities to turn inwards and develop a sensitive ear for the signals and messages their bodies are sending them. This will be so helpful later in life. As for you, it's likely you're past the point of simple information being enough to have a big effect, although it's still important. If you're struggling with a more severe disruption or disordered eating relationship, one that's persisted for many years, you need more information. And beyond information, you need tools, some of which I'm going to give you today, and hopefully they will be helpful. But before I do this, this is the second point I want to make, very important. Information about information is imperative to have while working to transform anything. And as we are talking about today, this includes your relationship to food. But the thing is, it must be the right kind of information. The wrong kind of information about what you should eat can have completely detrimental effects. So what I mean by this is that you need to do some research on your own. Of course, if you're here now, this is obviously something you are aware of, and that's wonderful, but do not stop here. The information I can give you in this short amount of time is general and limited. Find scientific sources, contact me for sources, and dig deeper. Work to understand yourself, and honestly, work to understand what's happening on a biological level. The mechanisms behind eating, behind weight gain, learn those, work to understand those. Stop researching the newest diet trends and start researching healthy gut microbiomes and the variations in why and where people gain weight. Understand yourself. This is crucial at a deep level. Choose reputable sources and turn off the rest of the noise. So, okay, yes, please share your sources here. Now that I've made that point, let me back up a bit. I want to address what I'm talking about when I speak about disordered eating. So we're going to go a little bit backwards. But please, in the chats, I feel free to share sources that you have. When I speak about disordered eating, I'm referring to both clinically diagnosable issues on both ends of the eating and non-eating spectrums, as well as less severe issues, perhaps not clinically diagnosable, but which can cause or do cause some disruption in your life. This is a pretty big range, and so for that reason, I've chosen to focus on 3 of the most common disorders, and those are anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating. I'm going to speak about trauma in regards to these disorders, but as I will also mention, disordered eating does not always stem from a particular traumatic event or events, and that's according to science. Anecdotally, however, I've never worked with someone who suffered from disordered eating who did not also have a trauma history. I have never. So maybe you have, I have not. So for at least the purposes of this issue, trauma and disordered eating, I'm going to go against science, and I'm going to say that it is perfectly normal to have trauma and from that have developed a disordered relationship with food. This definitely happens. And one important piece of information that was really eye-opening for me, and perhaps you're already aware of it, it was made clear by trauma research at Harvard University. And this research shows us that for young people, food is actually the first drug they have access to. For that reason, many people who have experienced trauma, and for our purposes here, let us define trauma as a response to any acute or long-term stressor. So for anyone who has experienced trauma earlier in life, food is the first drug they have access to as a method of control or numbing out. Maybe you have experience with this. In my unique journey, this was the case for me. And as I segue into more detail about specific types of disordered relationships to food, I think it's beneficial to tell you a little of my history to illustrate how food came to be such an issue in my life. After a very rough and traumatic early childhood with a substance abusing and abusive biological father, when I was 5 years old, my mom, and she had already left the man at this time, she was working hard to support her 2 children alone. She hired a young man to babysit me and my brother after school. This man repeatedly sexually abused me while locking my brother out of the house over a long period of time. Eventually, I wrote about the experience in a journal. I was in kindergarten at the time in school, and the man was arrested. And man's a tough word because he was actually only 17, so compassion for this person as well. There are many directions I could go with this story, but the main point is to share that I was highly traumatized. And although my mom put me in therapy, it just was not enough. So I turned to drugs, and the drug that I turned to, the drug that was available to me, it was food. As early as I can remember, I had a problem with binge eating. To add to the stress that I was under that caused my disconnection in the first place, because I was binge eating, I was not thin, obviously. That's what happens when you binge eat. And this was a problem in my family, a big problem in my family. My mother and my grandmother, both of which struggled with their own disordered relationships with food off and on my whole life. They made it very clear in words and behavior that being overweight was unacceptable, not just in our family, but in society. They both struggled with their own traumas and were also using control of food as a drug. I didn't know this then, but beyond this drug use, they had beliefs about self-image that were equally damaging. So drug use and beliefs. I was secretive, I was filled with guilt and shame, I had a lot of self-loathing my entire childhood. And this was the beginning of 25 plus years of my own struggles with disordered eating, which have included attempts at anorexia. My physiology doesn't work with it. I'll talk about that a little bit later. It also included binge eating, as I've expressed, which eventually became bulimia, and that included purging and compulsive exercise. At the age of 20, my main issue was binge eating. I was just finishing university, and I woke up to myself. I was overweight. I was completely out of shape. I could not even run for 30 seconds in a row, really out of shape. I realized something needed to change at that moment. At the time, I wasn't thinking about my relationship to food in relationship to my trauma. So the first thing I turned to was dieting, and this is where things really began to degrade. As it turns out, hopefully you know this, if you don't, let me tell you, diets and binge eating do not go together. And in fact, dieting can ignite an increase in binge eating behavior. This is exactly what happened to me and what eventually led to full-blown bulimia. Because I was binge eating and because I had this early ingrained belief system that being overweight was so wrong, and because no matter how hard I tried to not eat, I just could not stop myself, I eventually turned to the only technique I could, which was purging. And this purge behavior, it included, as I said, both compulsive exercise, which ended up in a lot of injuries, as well as vomiting, taking laxatives. And this took a pretty heavy toll on my body. It raged off and on for years, sometimes more than others, and other times it was so bad I'd spend the whole day basically unable to function, locked in a binge and purge cycle, literally hiding from the world. Eventually, I developed a bulge over my heart, and I researched it and found out what it was, and I realized if I didn't do something to help myself, I was going to die, literally going to die. I spent the next 15 years working to address my relationship to food, trying and failing to fix it. I got into therapy and I confessed what I was doing. I used all of these psychological interventions alongside diets, exercise, research, you name it. I was desperately trying. No matter what, I could not seem to stop myself. I didn't know at the time, but what the problem turned out to be was that I was only addressing my relationship to food in a few of the crucial ways that needed addressing when healing oneself. I was dealing with what I was eating, and I was working on my psychological relationship to food. But the challenge was that was only part of the story. There were actually deeply rooted biological issues that, without being addressed, were holding me back from full and complete healing. So maybe this story has some resonance with you. During the early years of my self-transformation journey, I had the mindset that I was 100% responsible for my life. But I didn't actually understand what that meant until many years later. I thought it meant I was to blame for everything that was happening to me. But what it actually meant was that while I was absolutely not to blame for the things that had happened to me in my life, including my failure at healing my relationship to food, I was responsible for recognizing what was in my power to control and working on collaborating, a big word here, on collaborating with my biology and my physiology to help myself, along with a team of medical professionals. So finding this information out was life-saving for me because I believed I was to blame. Because I confused responsibility with blame, I wasn't owning and admitting the full spectrum of my challenges. And in that way, I was not getting all of the help that I needed. You see, as it turned out, the path to healing for me was not just psychological, even if that's how it started out. Because I had used food as a drug so early in my life, and then later, because I began the habit of purging after binging, I had created, thank you, Rona, reflexive habits around food that were being rewarded in my brain. So I'd created reflexive habits rewarded in my brain through hormone and neurochemical release in such a way that my physiology was way out of balance. This physiological imbalance was creating craving and food-seeking behavior, and it was often beyond my control to do anything about. I didn't want to keep doing the things I was doing, but I just could not stop myself. And no amount of addressing my trauma was going to fix that. I didn't need to just address my trauma. I needed to address the habits, the breaking and forming of them, my decision-making capacity, my disrupted physiological reward circuitry, and my physiological imbalances. I needed to do this all together. I'm like, whoa, that is a lot, right? So let me point out now that while it sounds like I'm talking about me, I am also talking about you. You may not have gone through trauma, or you may have, but likely if you are here right now, you have confused understanding of the difference between blame and responsibility. And if you have not been able to heal yourself, likely you are working on only one part of the picture, and it is not your fault. And this is important point number 3. If you have a disordered relationship to food, and most especially if you have one that is clinically diagnosable, as I did, you cannot expect to heal yourself just by dealing with trauma or through a purely psychological approach. This is not to downplay the importance of addressing trauma when it comes to your healing process. Never downplay that. But it is to say that trauma experiences create biological changes that are best dealt with through a variety of approaches, not merely psychological. When it comes to a bad relationship to food, things are almost certainly never one-dimensional. For that reason, not only can you not expect healing trauma to be enough to fix disordered eating, neither can you expect diets to be the solution. In fact, as I've already mentioned, and please take note if you have a binge eating disorder or bulimia or are on the spectrum of those, diets are the enemy. They will trigger binge eating behavior and create more cycling. They will not lead you to the outcomes you are looking for, which are likely related to weight loss, but at the deeper level are related to feeling good more and bad less. If this is the case, if diets are not the answer, and if dealing with trauma is not the answer, you may be wondering what then you can do. And this is something that I'm going to talk about now. But first, I want to address a couple of eating disordered myths. So for instance, maybe you have heard that maybe you have trauma, and maybe you don't. And as it turns out, the myth that binge eating and bulimia mostly arise from trauma experiences is not supported by science. Although, as I said at the beginning, just because science doesn't yet support something does not inherently mean it isn't true. But these myths are not just with binge eating, they're not just with bulimia. On the spectrum of not feeding yourself, I don't want to overlook this, or what we refer to as anorexia nervosa, the often told myth is that it arises from perfectionism. This is also not supported by science. So first of all, let me speak a little bit about anorexia. Maybe you already know this, but anorexia is the number one most dangerous psychiatric disorder of all, and the probability of death is very high. Besides the perfectionism myth, the other myths around it are that it's increasing, and that increasing is often credited to media messaging. So interestingly, the facts are that anorexia, which was first recorded in the 1600s, is actually not increasing in prevalence, but it's remained quite stable over time for the past 300 and more years. This fact leads researchers to believe there is a strong biological component for this disease, and in fact that some people may be genetically predisposed to developing it under the right environmental conditions. What we know about anorexia is that the reward systems in the brain are haywire. So most humans have reward circuitry in the brain that is triggered when they eat. Anorexics experience reward triggering for not eating or choosing only low-calorie, low-fat foods. So contrary to what some people may assume about anorexia, that it's a disease characterized by always trying to not eat, or that a person with anorexia may feel bad for not eating, in fact, this isn't the case. Anorexia has been shown to be a disruption in the reward pathway of the brain. And a person dealing with it actually feels good when they don't eat, and they feel bad when they do eat. So this is one of the things that makes anorexia so complicated to treat. It cannot just be treated by forcing someone to eat. You can't just lock someone in a room. That could actually make things much worse and force food down their throat. As for bulimia and binge eating disorders, the brain, which is wired to receive reward for eating as much food as quickly as possible, and this is attributed to evolutionary reasons. In these people, the brain is hyper-rewarding these individuals for overeating. So the truth about bulimia and binge eating is that while anorexia is much more about habits, these disorders are even more biological, and often it's the case that pharmacological treatment is needed alongside the other approaches I will speak about. So if you're only working on behavior, it's often not enough for these disorders. Now, bulimia, unlike anorexia, is on the rise, and it's hypothesized that this is because of media and modern images and messages. Both binge eating and bulimia are believed to be biological issues, deeply biological issues. And while these two ends of the spectrum are pretty different, and different treatment modalities are indicated depending upon what someone is challenged with, it's important that when we're looking at this, when we're looking at transforming our own disordered relationship to food, that we look at the similarities. And there are some similarities and generalizations. So before I go further, I want to talk about two boxes. You can write this down if you feel to. You can draw two boxes. In one box, you write what I wish to do, what you wish to do. And in the other box, you write what I actually do. Maybe that brings a little laugh to your face, the difference between the two boxes. So let's imagine these boxes are topic specific. In the topic of food, which is where we're talking about, for people with disordered relationships with food, there's a big discrepancy between these two boxes. In between these boxes is where the problems arise. In between these boxes, you have four important aspects to your relationship to food that must be addressed. The first is habits, so you can make little arrows that go between. The first is habits. For both sides of the too much and too little spectrum of eating, what's often instigated by something biological is amplified when people make conscious decisions to respond to food in the way they do, so similar to me in childhood. You can think about that story. I made the choice to use food, and this choice became a habit, and that habit eventually became a reflex. Even if those decisions are made very early in life, and perhaps especially then, what is happening is that the brain is encoding those habits and making them reflexive. So much like walking or riding a bike becomes reflexive, meaning you no longer have to think about it. And for this reason, habits, which have become reflexes, are highly disordered, and these have to be addressed. And please forgive yourself, because it's not so easy as just stopping the habit. You don't just say, okay, stop this habit, start another one. To stop a habit takes time, takes understanding, possible intervention of some sort, both psychological and medical. Once a habit becomes a reflex, it's operating in what most people refer to as the subconscious mind, so low. Now think back to what I said earlier about becoming disconnected from our internal guidance system. If we have habits such as emotional eating, mindless or bored eating, or food restriction or purging behavior, we have these habits, we're learning them, and we execute them long enough, and that may be long or short depending on you and your uniqueness, they become reflexes, and then we become out of touch with our internal guidance system. So if that's the case, how will we ever be able to break the spell? And that's literally what we're under at this point, a spell. We want to do something different, but for some reason, we just can't seem to. And this is the first issue that needs to be addressed when working on our eating disordered behavior, meaning habits, their formation, and how to break them. And that itself is a big, big topic. The second between the boxes issue, so you can make another little arrow, are decision-making processes. And this actually applies to the challenge of changing habits, and it's even more important when seeking treatment. Decision-making processes in people with disordered eating are stunted. You have definitely experienced this yourself if you have a disordered eating relationship. You don't want to eat that fill-in-the-blank food, whatever it is, and you even tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to, but then before you know it, there you are with the cupboards open, shoving food in your mouth. I can't tell you how many times I've been there. Our reflexive behavior throws off our capacity to make appropriate decisions, and so it can feel like, and is very much like, we become victims to our behavior, like there's no way out. And people say, well, just stop, and you want to stop. You think still in a confused way that you're able to stop, that you're to blame for not being able to stop. And this is you failing to recognize that, in fact, you're not to blame. This reflexive behavior holds you away from your capacity to decide for yourself. So alongside habits, we also have to address restoring our ability to make decisions properly, so decision-making processes. The third between the box issue are homeostatic processes. These are the body's energy checks and balance systems. For people with disordered eating, this is also out of balance, and it needs to be addressed at the biological level. And this is where working with a trained and experienced medical professional comes in handy. And these are things like metabolism, electrolyte balances. Likely for extreme issues, pharmacological treatments are necessary. They are necessary. There are many different areas of the brain involved in disordered eating that we know about now. A lot of new information. There are disruptions to hormones, metabolism is thrown off, and these imbalances can create seeking or restricting behavior. And while it may feel like you are the one doing the bad thing, actually it is a response to what's happening at the physiological level. So it's not about you being bad. The fourth between the boxes issue has to do with your brain's reward system and reward pathways. Disruption in the reward circuitry of the brain, just like in homeostatic processes, leads to the outcomes of seeking or avoiding food. In binge eating and bulimia, the natural reward systems of eating are ramped up. So this is normal, and then it gets even more amplified. In anorexia, the reward systems, as I said, are backwards. This fourth issue is also a biological issue, and it should be addressed with a medical professional, and often is best treated, especially in the case of binge eating and bulimia, so don't be resistant to this, with medications of some sort. Anorexia responds much better to behavioral interventions than does bulimia and binge eating. Unfortunately, that's true. So while behavioral interventions are important in both, you need to release yourself from blame and seek the medical treatment you deserve to give yourself the added support you need. And trust me, I have a little aversion to medical treatment, so if you're feeling that way, I understand. To recap, these are the 4 challenges that must be addressed whenever there is a disruption between the alignment of what you know you should do and what you are actually doing. They are habits, decision-making, homeostatic processes, and reward circuitry. While this all may seem like a challenging path to healing, and trust me, it's definitely not easy, please do not be discouraged. Not only does science show it is possible to heal, If you look at the big picture and address all of the components, it is highly probable. And I am a testament to that, definitely. Today, in this moment, I have as healthy a relationship to food as I have ever had. I eat when I'm hungry and not when I'm full, unless I consciously decide to overeat, which I do sometimes, like on Thanksgiving, but even sometimes on full moon. I exercise, but at moderate levels, and I avoid purging behaviors. I feel good when I eat, and I don't feel shame and guilt. And this transformation came from working on all of the 4 things that I have just mentioned, not over a short period of time, but across many, many years. And that is important to note, because if there is one thing that I wish for you, and it's actually 2 things, it's patience and perseverance. I also want to say that a healthy relationship should never be confused with a perfect relationship. I still have my challenges, but challenge is a normal part of any relationship. And once you develop, like I did, the confidence in your healing process, challenge becomes an aid to self-transformation rather than a barrier. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, this is a lot. What is it I can do to help myself with these eating related challenges? And that is what I want to share with you now before we practice together. So as you can see, the truth is the decision to eat or not eat is complicated. There is no single perfect approach. The biology must be addressed alongside the psychology. We have the power to affect our biology through our capacity to be with ourselves. So see this. Stop now and notice your breath. Try not to change it. If you're like most people, as soon as you began watching the breath, it began to change on its own. Now, granted, you don't have any sinus issues or sickness right now. It likely began to slow down and smooth itself out. And this is not just about the breath, and that's what I want to point out. Just as your relationship to food is not just about the food, ever. Your breath changing like that had other important and profound effects on the rest of your physiological system. As your breath relaxed, your parasympathetic nervous system increased in activity. Your heart rate slowed down, and your digestion capacities increased. Various hormones were increased or decreased related to stress and feelings of well-being. This is an important point because if this happens from a complete non-interference, merely a paying attention, what could the implications be if you did interfere? Maybe even stronger positive effects could occur. So bringing this back to biology and your relationship to food and how to heal, the number one thing within your control is your ability to pay attention. Simply by paying attention to and becoming sensitive towards physiological changes in your body and mind, developing introspective capacity, that is, this allows you to start the process of resetting your biology so that those aspects of your relationship to food can resolve. Now, this does not mean that you may not also need therapy or pharmacological interventions, but it is to say you and how you be with and notice yourself have a profound effect on how your physiology functions, and this is extremely important when dealing with your relationship to food. Once you develop the skill of being sensitive to subtle changes, then you can work to intervene, and this brings you in touch with your decision-making processes. You notice a shift, you intervene, you make a new choice, and now you're challenging habits. You have the power to help yourself. You have the power. So as I said, the number one thing that you can do right now to begin to heal is to develop introspective capacities. And this is supported by research. Doing so will allow you to affect yourself at all of the 4 levels I have addressed, and this includes at the biological level. Beliefs and biology are related. Habits and biology are related. When we pay attention to the breath, much more than the breath changes. When we pay attention to our subtle body signals, more is happening that will help us eventually heal. So then you combine this with personal work, you combine this personal work with the necessary medical interventions and or coaching or psychological counseling. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is the best. And in this way, you start stacking the cards in your favor towards overcoming your poor relationship to food. Habits and decisions are happening at very subtle levels in the body and mind, and it takes a deep sensitivity to identify them. Identifying them is the most important step to healing. This is what we are going to practice today. But let me first share our closing points. So we're only an hour and a half. Hopefully I'm on time. Well, this was a lot of information. Honestly, we've just glanced the surface, just barely skimmed it. The take-home message, though, is pretty simple. If you want to end disordered eating, there are 4 steps you must take now. 1, let go of shame, guilt, blame, and black and white thinking, or the belief that there will ever be a perfect diet or relationship to anything, including food. This type of thinking keeps you locked in stress, and stress is a major issue in disordered eating, and it will just keep the cycle going. 2, gather information. Information about your eating disorder is powerful. Do not let yourself become overwhelmed, however. Find 1 or 2 credible sources, scientific sources, and inform yourself about the topic. When we understand the mechanism behind our experience, and Justine, I encourage you to explore sugar, which is very interesting, the mechanism behind sugar addiction, then we're more free to see that while we can and should help ourselves, we're not to blame. Other intervening factors are at work beyond the scope of conscious volition. So cut yourself some slack and educate yourself deeply in the right way. 3, see that biology is a major part of where disordered eating comes from, and that habits, decision-making abilities, and homeostatic processes and reward systems are all equally important when it comes to achieving your goals or not. Seek medical help and see if there is a treatment that might work to support the psychological and insight-driven work you are doing on your own, or if you have a therapist or a coach. 4, develop introspective sensitivity to your subtle physiological processes. Use simple meditation techniques. Seek out the support of an experienced teacher or guide, and drop the belief that using an app should have healed you by now. Especially if you are someone who has experienced significant trauma, then by all means do not go this path alone. If you're working with a psychologist, find one who uses cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the most highly supported treatment methodology. So you can ask them beforehand before you undertake working with that person. So now that I've recapped the most important takeaways from our discussion, which I feel like the time has just kind of flown by, I want to introduce you to a systematic process by which to practice insight-driven meditation. This is a process you can begin to use today. And in fact, we'll practice it together now. So please grab a cushion, begin to prepare yourself. Afterwards, we'll have time for questions and answers. So this meditation that we're going to do together, it's less a meditation and more a process of acceptance and developing wisdom and introspection, like I discussed the importance of. As I've said before, while you should consider yourself 100% responsible for your life, you're definitely not 100% to blame for the things that have happened to you within it. If you are currently suffering from a disrupted and disordered relationship to food, psychology and insight practices are a beautiful way to execute your personal responsibility and to do the work within your control to help you transform your story. But alone, they are often not enough. Let me say that again. Alone, they are often not enough. This practice is a first step to cultivating the necessary relaxed body-mind, introspective sensitivity, and experiential wisdom that will, if continued across time, so you can't give up, develop into one of the biggest supports you can give yourself on your healing journey. And for me, this was absolutely true. Before I begin the meditation, I want to give you the 5 main points I'm going to be asking you to consider. And you can write these down so that you can use them in the future. You don't need to listen to a recording to do this practice. This practice comes from Buddhism, and while specifically not supported by science, similar tools like it are. So this in particular practice has not been researched. The practice consists of 5 stages, and I encourage you, like I said, to write these down before we begin. Stage 1 is recognition. At this stage, we allow our mind to face the truth that we have a problem, whether of our own making or from an external source, it doesn't matter. Stage 2 is acceptance. At this stage, we practice accepting the challenge completely, letting it be fully within our awareness without denying or deluding ourselves about it. Stage 3 is embracing. Here we practice applying love and compassion to our suffering, as though we are a healthy mother with a very small child. We hold our pain in an authentically kind way and allow ourselves to be fully there for it. Stage 4 is looking deeply. Once we get to this stage, in a relaxed and calm way, we begin to investigate how it is the challenge came about, what the origins of it are, and we work to understand that this challenge has deep roots. Stage 5 is insight. At the final stage of this meditation, we don't do anything. We simply allow the flowers of insight that come from the seeds of looking deeply in a relaxed way to blossom. It's important at this stage that we remain calm and relaxed, that we don't push ourselves or rush ourselves. Insight is not something that can be forced. It must come about naturally. If it does not arise in one sitting, that is perfectly normal. We come back again and again, day after day, without expectation, but with faith that this stage is a natural progression of our sustained practice, and one day, without a doubt, a flower will bloom in our minds. I recommend that alongside the other advice to let go of blame, to research and inform yourself, to seek medical support, and recognize the role of biology, that you practice this particular meditation on a daily basis for the next month at a minimum. And honestly, you may need to practice it for years. I will guide you in it now, and we'll put this recording up on my Insight Timer page and my website for you to use when you need it. But the truth is, once you understand the process, you can easily do this practice on your own, literally at any time. It doesn't even have to be very long. We will practice now, and at the completion, I'm going to hang around a little bit to take any questions, to look at some of the chats. I really hope this practice meets you where you are at on your path. So let's begin. Close your eyes or leave them open. If you're new to meditation, closing your eyes will likely come more naturally and will allow you to blunt external distraction. But this is your practice, and you have to do what intuitively feels right for you. For a moment, just be in silence as you open your mind to all of the sensations currently within your perception. Do not try to change anything, and accept everything that comes. Now bring your awareness to your breath. Relax into your natural breath rhythm, slow or fast, shallow or deep, all is okay. Don't judge, just simply watch and be with yourself as you breathe. If at any time the meditation becomes too much for you, return to the meditation at the beginning of our time together and remind yourself that you are safe, supported, and all is okay. Bring your mind now to the challenges that you face with eating. Take a few moments to allow the feelings and sensations around these challenges to fully arise in your body and mind. Give space to these feelings and sensations, words or imagery. Do not push anything away. Notice where the challenges manifest in your body and become very sensitive to thoughts and emotions that rise up. See the challenges you face and allow yourself to be fully with them for a few moments in silence. Imagine now that you are opening yourself up even more to these challenges. Rather than trying to change them, invite them in. Tell them you accept them exactly as they are. As these feelings or sensations grow within you, imagine you are able to hold them, to apply love to them, to be there for them like a loving mother is there for a small and vulnerable child. You can use words like, I am here for you, or you are safe, or you can visualize yourself touching softly the part of you who suffers, hugging and holding this part with an openness and sensitivity that is 100% free of judgment. Notice how it feels to be there for this part of yourself in a loving way. Keep your mind with these feelings and the inspection of these challenges you face, and begin to lengthen and relax your breathing. Remind yourself that you are safe, you are supported, you are okay. As your body relaxes into your breath, take time now to look closely at this pain, at these challenges. Ask them where they came from. Look for the origin of their birth. See that they have roots and inspect those roots as clearly as possible. As you inspect the origin of this pain, these challenges, listen to what your body and mind are telling you. Listen to what your pain is telling you. Hear it in physical sensations, in words, in imagery, in emotions. Be fully open to however your body and mind wish to communicate. Continue to breathe in a soft and extended way. Now begin to come back. Let go and come back. You may even say goodbye to this pain, not shoving it down, but letting it know you will be back for it again, letting it know it is safe within you and that you will not abandon it. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Open your mouth and let it out. One more time, an even deeper in-breath, an even longer exhale. Allow your breath to return to normal. And open your eyes. What I need you to know is that today I have only spoken about a small part of the story, but it is an important first step in the road to healing yourself and your relationship to food. Because this topic is so important to me, as I said at the beginning, I've been working over the last 2 years to develop a course that is all-encompassing and takes people on a journey towards ultimate well-being. This course is called It's Not About the Food, and it covers the how, what, when, and why of eating. So it's very, very rich, the whole and complete picture. It's unlike a diet, it's unlike mindful eating, and it gives you the space to be the hero in charge of writing your own future and creating your perfect relationship to food from your intuitive self. If you want to know more about it, you can email me at sarah@mindfulisland.com. And otherwise, you can stay connected to me through my meditations here on this incredible platform that is Insight Timer. So very thankful for this platform that brings us together. Thank you so much for choosing to share your valuable time and energy with me today. This topic is incredibly meaningful to me, and I hope that I have been able to give you a small slice of faith that healing is absolutely coming for you.